Welcome to the show. Former President Jimmy Carter is in hospice care. Did neither President Biden nor Vice President Kamala Harris mention President's Day? Newly elected Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman checks himself into the hospital for clinical depression. As we all know, today is the day we will announce one of the luckiest winners of my dinner giveaway at the end of the show. So be sure to stick around because you do not want to miss this. Former President Jimmy Carter, age 98, is in hospice care. Here's what CNN recently said about the ailing former president.
A mix of sadness and pride falls over the town of Plains, Georgia tonight as the residents here, about 500 in this tiny town, digest the news that the former president that they hold so dear is receiving end-of-life care. You know, we began the day, Anderson, with Miss Benita at her restaurant just down Main Street having some grits and eggs. And she recalled to us how just a few years ago she took her own kids to see the former president during Sunday school. That's because up until recently, he was conducting Sunday school lessons at the church right here in this community.
Now, we wish Mr. Carter no ill will, but if historians are fair, Carter should go down as one of America's worst presidents for many reasons, but primarily for what he did, in my opinion, in Iran, or more precisely, how he allowed Iran to become an Islamic terrorist state. Here's what conservative Paul Crespo wrote, and I'm quoting him. Carter's greatest foreign policy fiasco was in Iran, where his policies undermined another staunch U.S. ally, invited the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and helped spawn the great Islamo-fascism movement that threatens us all today. By Middle Eastern standards, the conflicted and self-absorbed Iranian leader Reza Shah Pahlavi was, nevertheless, an enlightened liberal leader. Strongly pro-American, he was westernizing and modernizing an incredibly backward country against the desires of reactionary Muslim religious fanatics. With a U.S.-trained and U.S.-equipped military, the Shah was the linchpin of American defense policy in the Gulf, serving as a bulwark against Soviet expansion into the oil-rich region. Helping to defend American interests, however, proved to be the Shah's downfall. Pressured by Carter to acquiesce to radical rebels and terrorists, the Shah was undermined and overthrown in early 1979, toward the end of Carter's term. While Carter publicly feigned supporting the Shah, from day one, Carter put the Shah under the gun, pressuring him to release thousands of so-called political prisoners. Most were radical Muslims, terrorists, and pro-Soviet Marxists. Carter then began withdrawing U.S. support, secretly ordering the CIA to stop paying the reportedly $4 million per year in bribes the agency paid the religious mullahs to tone down their rhetoric. These medieval Muslim leaders hated the Shah not because he was a dictator, but because he was secular and pro-Western and was expanding the rights of women. Carter simultaneously pressured the Shah to institute so-called democratic reforms, with threats to withhold vital military aid and training if the Shah didn't agree. These reforms included allowing free assembly, which left Islamic and Soviet-supported anti-government groups free to meet and agitate for the Shah's overthrow. Of course, these reforms were unheard of anywhere else in the region, and Carter didn't press for them anywhere else in the Islamic world. The predictable result of the Shah's acceptance of these demands was a perception of weakness and an escalation of opposition. A well-organized network in Iran under Soviet direction fanned this growing uprising. By the fall of 1977, university students and Shiite clergy who had long opposed the Shah's modernizing policies began a well-coordinated and well-financed series of street demonstrations supported by media frenzy. As the revolutionary crisis reached a head, Carter then sent U.S. military emissaries to strong-arm the Shah and to persuade his top generals to show restraint against the street protest. Hoping to prevent more bloodshed, the weak and ill Shah agreed. In early 1979, the Shah surrendered, virtually without a fight, and his pro-government American government was overthrown. The Ayatollah Khomeini's brutal new theocratic dictatorship then executed many of the political prisoners Carter was supposedly trying to help, along with over 20,000 pro-Western Iranians. As for the Shah's top generals, the ones Carter told to stand down and not try to suppress the Ayatollah's fanatical supporters, well, more than 24 were summarily murdered. Women were sent back into servitude. Citizens were arrested for the slightest pro-Western sentiment. Soon, American diplomats were taken hostage. Remember that? Ushering in the crisis that would most define Carter's disastrous administration. And the Iranian Islamic Republic became the world's greatest state sponsor of terrorism. End of quote. This is a legacy of former President Jimmy Carter. Did neither President Biden nor VP Kamala Harris mention President's Day? And John Fetterman complained of being lightheaded during a February 8 retreat with his Democrat senatorial colleagues and was admitted to George Washington University Hospital. Fetterman has now checked into Walter Reed, citing clinical depression as the reason for his visit. The White House on Friday praised Fetterman's hospital stay as the right thing and the brave thing to do. Millions of Americans, as you know, said the press secretary, go untreated with depression every day. Senator Fetterman did the right thing and the brave thing, she said this week, by getting the help that he definitely needs. The president is committed to making sure every American can get the help they need too, end of quote. Joining me to discuss this is Philadelphia resident and Washington Examiner writer, Christopher Tremoglie. Chris, you're the only one I know who pointed out that Biden and Harris failed to say one thing about President's Day.
Yeah, it was quite shocking myself to find that they actually didn't. And I went back through the records, and they have previously said, I acknowledged the holiday earlier in previous years. So it was kind of, I mean, you would think like the President of the United States would acknowledge President's Day, right? Like that's of all the days to kind of just give a little tweet about the 5-10 seconds it says to send out a tweet. Neither Biden nor Harris nor anyone on their staffs decided to do this. And I just kind of, I felt it was kind of indicative of the fact that they just really have like this unpatriotic stance about America. They kind of do everything they can to take American values down and only want to like surround themselves, drape themselves with the flag and with patriotism when it's convenient for them, and they try to make a political issue of it. But in their hearts, when it comes to like natural, just living and the things they do, they don't. It doesn't do anything.
What about President Trump? Did he say anything about President's Day?
Conversely, President Trump did post about President's Day and wished a happy President's Day on his Truth Social. So I think when you're comparing the two, when you have President Trump compared to the Democrats, it's easy to identify who's really a patriot and who's not.